On the Hockey IQ podcast today, we bring on Derek Toninato. Derek has built a program out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, a non-traditional hockey market. And there's a ton of lessons and experiences that he's taken from that I think are applicable to so many. And you can tell that he's had difficult conversations. He's had a lot of fun. He's built a program. He's talked about moving players on. So this is a great conversation for players, parents, coaches alike. So really excited to share this. Let's get into it. On the Hockey IQ podcast today, we bring on Derek Toninato. Did I pronounce that properly?
Correct. Good job.
Awesome. Usually I'm butchering these, so that makes me proud and excited. So you've got an interesting background. You're in we're in a non-traditional hockey market, building a program, but you played some pro. Maybe a quick 30-second background of how you got to where you are currently.
Yeah, so I grew up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, playing hockey, and of course loved it. Had the dream of playing in the NHL someday, and just made my way through junior in college, and then I was able to play 4 years of minor pro, and I ended up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is where I played about half my pro career, and then met my wife, and we got married, and then after I retired, we ended up moving back to Tulsa. So it's a great city, and she's from there, so that's kind of how I ended up in a non-traditional market and became an Okie. Lived there for 20 years, but I just recently moved to the Dallas area, and I'm now coaching in two programs: the Dallas Stars Elite Tier 1 program and Dallas Penguins, and doing lessons and skill development stuff. And so we just moved down a few months ago, so we're getting acclimated to the big city.
The big D, as they call
it. The big D. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. But going back to your Tulsa, Oklahoma days, you built a pretty successful program there with limited resources, to say the least, especially in player numbers. Maybe give us a background on how you build a successful program in Tulsa.
Well, first off, it was Clage Cable and myself. We both kind of co-headed it and coached and just kind of rallied the troops, so to speak, of the hockey community there. An opportunity opened up for us to do a camp back in 2012, and then from there it just grew, and the rink actually came to us and asked us to take over the program. So we did that together, and now since I moved, he's currently running it right now. But to answer the question a little bit more specifically, it's really just putting your nose to the grindstone and having vision and communicating that vision. And with our hockey backgrounds, he played pro as well. He played D1, USHL, just like most of us did. I played D3, but he played D1. But so we just cast the vision, like, hey, your kids can make it if they want to. Like they got a dream in their heart. This game is no longer you have to live where there's outdoor ice. That's just not the case anymore. And with the training that is everywhere now, you got, guys that have played D1 pro or whatever. In other words, guys that know what they're talking about. They've been around the game. They've been around other coaches and high-end coaches. And so they have ways of training kids from a background that they don't know that, and their parents don't know that. We've run into, a lot of people that they play, hey, I played football, I played baseball. Well, that's okay. I mean, we've got the knowledge of how to train them on the ice, but it's the mindset that's the big one. That's the big separator. So if you got that high-end athletic mindset, that's huge. So but in Tulsa, we just we had a great family group, and they all bought in, and the program grew. And we put our effort into expanding the game through going into schools in the early days, and bringing donuts and handing out flyers and stuff like that. And then the Learn to Play program that the NHL initiative put out, really helped. So if there's a program out there, a small market program that can get involved with an NHL team in that Learn to Play program, it is huge. And actually they reached out to us because we were in their TV market, and they were reaching out to everybody in their team. The Dallas Stars were, and it was a no-brainer. Yes, we would love to do that. And so we started doing that, and it really helped get kids in at a pretty cheap expense and with low commitment. But to this day, there's kids playing travel hockey that started in that program. So really great program, and I would encourage that to everybody that is looking to grow their youth hockey program.
So you just rattled off a lot of things. I think we need to dig a little bit deeper on a few of those. So you're going into schools, how are you working with schools? Is it going into the PE classes? Do they have big rallies, mailers? What does that look like?
So when we were doing that, I don't think we haven't done it for a few years, and I don't think they are right now because of the Learn to Play program. But before that, we didn't have that, and we just did try hockey for free dates. You know how USA Hockey has the try hockey for free in the fall and then in the winter.
Yep.
We did it once a month, and worked with the rink just to try to get kids in the game. And that was a battle because you really do have to do like we went into the schools, and we had a guy that helped us kind of guide us through that process. And you got to get permission to go in the schools, and it's kind of hard. Nowadays with the technology, they have like Peach Jar as one of them, where you can just send an email out and it goes to all the database in the school, in the elementary school, in the middle school, and it's a really good way to communicate what you got going on, like the Learn to Play program, or if it's a try hockey for free date, that you're putting on. It's an easy, inexpensive way to do it. Now, the way we put resource into it, man, we had to put money aside to do that, and, of course we couldn't do it all ourselves. And, we had volunteers, and we paid a couple, college kids to help us out, to go in and say, hey, there's a youth hockey program in town, and, it's going good. We'd love for you to try it, type of thing. And, you got to bring the treats in too. You got to bring the donuts just to kind of win them over. But, it's a good way to get in the door if that's, if that's the way to getting, face to face. But the Peach Jar, and there's other programs that are similar to that schools use, and just going into the school district and finding out what they use would be the way to do it. And then that way you can just kick out a flyer and get on schedule with them and stay in front of the whole student body, the parents of the student body, so that's probably a good way to do it. And then social media obviously is huge. I mean, with today's age, all the kids have devices. I mean, at crazy young ages, too young in my opinion, but they're all on it, and social media, and the parents are, so like a great inexpensive way to communicate the programs that you got going on to get people involved in hockey or to try hockey. And from there, it's all about retention, so we can talk about that a little bit if you want to.
Exactly where I was going with this. You were talking about mindset being the big separator, and obviously that's a big thing, but just getting that early, okay, now they're in the rink. How do we make them have a good experience, have fun, retain them to get to the point where, they may want to have a little bit more than just showing up to the rink and playing once or twice a week.
Right. And I think that's a process. And what we learned in Tulsa through the Tulsa Junior Oilers youth hockey program is that you just got to be patient with that process, but you also have to have a plan. And some of it was just fumbling through it, to be honest with you. Every market's a little different. So like in Oklahoma in the fall, no one's on the streets. Everybody's in a football stadium. Friday night lights, baby, and so football's king, right? And you can't, like we just learned, you can't fight that. You just work with it, and so get them in the house league, or we call it the rec program, and from there, maybe get them into a skill development session where you got, like maybe the youth program runs a power skating session, or one of the coaches does on his own, a power skating session, or just a skill session like we did on Wednesday nights. We had a half hour. It was only a half hour. It was really inexpensive. It was a good way to get the newbies, the kids who just started out of the Learn to Play program or out of try hockey for free, to actually work on stick handling, shooting, passing, and really break it down and show them really, again, it's only a half hour. It's once a week. And it was in addition to their one practice a week, one game a week that they had going, you know? So it's kind of you step them up, and then from there, it's all them. They either catch it or they don't. And what we found is that most of the kids that are just have that athletic competitiveness, what am I trying to say? The athletic compete in them, they love it. I mean, I got baseball dads going, I can't believe he doesn't want to play baseball anymore. All he wants to do is have a hockey stick in his hand, you know? And football guys, like, you know, once football's over, he's begging to play hockey, you know? Obviously, because hockey's the greatest game in the world, but we know that,
Obviously.
Right. You know, but, you know, so they're learning and you know, and it's just it's a fun process. It is, but it doesn't happen overnight, you know, and if you can just settle in your heart, it's not going to happen overnight. Kind of have a game plan, stay in their world, but via, you know, the big thing is coaches staying in the world, you know. And in Tulsa, we had a small community, right? So it's obviously easier when it's smaller to stay in their world. A lot of the coaches were in a lot of the different programs. So like we had coaches that coached in the house league and in the on a competitive team, or in our, you know, in our skill skating program and in the house program. So, you know, it makes it a little easier to connect, and connection is the key. And again, I gotta go back to the families, the parents. The parent group's amazing. They connected with the new people. They always chipped in, and, you know, so you gotta have families that are willing to grow the game. Can't, like, the coaches and the president and the hockey director aren't going to get it all done, you know, and in a small market, and, you know, obviously in a big market even more so. But you know, and people feel empowered when they do that. Man, I helped grow this program, you know, it's their program. There's a lot of pride that comes with it. One of the biggest things I'm proud of being a part of Tulsa is that the pride that they carry being a Tulsa Junior Oiler. I mean, we show up and these kids wear their stuff, man, with pride, you know, and it's just the culture that we had to build over the years. And it's because, you know, the work they put in and the commitment their families and the help they did, and it all just kind of runs together.
So
hope that wasn't too confusing.
No, that was great. So I'm curious. So you're talking about the parents having large buy-in, and that obviously, you know, the kids enjoying the game is important part of that. Is there something that you did to say, hey, parents, you know, we want to make sure that this is a great experience for you, and reach out or like help promote that? Or is that pretty natural to them, since you're getting parents that maybe played sports before and understand that connectiveness?
Well, I think it happened by accident at first, and then we kind of caught on to it. So the kids that were just all in it, playing competitive travel hockey, and even some of the kids that were playing house league that wanted to go to the travel team, they wanted to get on the ice as much as possible. So, you know, a way of doing that was to help with the try hockey for free, or to help with the skill session, right? So we had the kids come out, and man, the kids come out, the parents are there, you know? And so we kind of backdoored it a little bit, you know, like, hey, have your kid come out with us. And then the parents are helping out because they're there, you know? And then it's not like they didn't want to. They're there, they want to help, you know? And they're talking to new people. The newbies have questions, because this is totally new. Think about a soccer mom coming in. All they got to bring in is a cleat and a ball, a pair of cleats and a ball, right? Well, with hockey, it's a bag and all this equipment. It's kind of right there alone. It's overwhelming for soccer mom. You know what I mean? And so, you know, when they see it's manageable, they see other hockey moms doing it now, and dads, and their community is pure communication to the parents, you know? And so that's been probably a big one that we didn't realize, but we did. We didn't realize it at first, but then we did as we kept going through the years.
That's pretty cool, getting the kids involved in helping. I'm assuming that it might even translate also to their performance or ability to pick up skills now that they're trying to teach it.
100%. It's a win for everybody. It helps out the program, it helps out the coaches, it helps out the new kids, and it actually helps the player out, because they're having to communicate with their words how to shoot or skate, you know what I mean? And then just that alone, when you hear yourself do that, you kind of have to process how you're doing it yourself. I know I've done this myself as a coach. When I'm trying to teach a really detailed thing that I just know how to do because I've done it forever. Now I'm communicating. It's like, oh, well, that's how I do it. You're kind of recalling how you do it, you know? And I think it's the same, but more on an elementary level for the kids, you know, teaching another one how to stride or to hold their stick. Well, that's teaching, they're actually reteaching themselves how to hold their stick properly. You know what I mean? So I think it's just good, and they're on the ice. And another thing too is I feel like we're building leadership skills in them and possibly future coaches, you know. I mean, I saw it in a bunch of kids that I can tell they're going to be coaches when they get older. They love the game so much, and they just go out there and they just help, and they found joy in just teaching these new kids. And it was just, man, that was the biggest blessing really to see. It was like, oh my gosh, these kids are loving this, you know, and the parents are helping, you know, coaches are helping. It's just, I'm kind of painting a picture of a rosy, you know, atmosphere. There's a ton of work that goes in before that, but when you're there, it really is a really cool, it's worth it. You know what I mean? It's like when you put in all this work to run a half marathon or whatever, and then you do it, it's amazing, you know? And it's the same process. It's a bit of front end work getting ready for that try hockey for free or that learn to play program, you know, but then when it's there and you're seeing everybody out there and everybody's excited, man, it's just so worth it, you know?
That is awesome. I love when you can get kids to give back, because exactly what you talked about. Like I remember talking to a bunch of new coaches or guys that just started coaching, and they're like, yeah, those like 2-3 years after I stopped playing and started coaching was like the best hockey I've ever played in my life, even though it was an adult league, because they had to relearn everything and actually got like a deeper understanding and the depth of knowledge. So that's really cool. Continuing on this kind of conversation, I'm curious. Okay, so now we've built a community, we've got players. That's good and well, but we then need to build up that talent, develop that talent. I'm curious of one, how you get the players to develop, and then two, how do you get maybe coaches or parents to help in that process?
Okay, so I'll answer the first one. How do we develop the players? And it's really just by providing opportunity for them to develop. And what we did is we had a certain amount of kids that actually communicated, I want to go for this. This is my game, and I want to reach to the stars. I want to go to the NHL. I want to play D1 or whatever their specific goal is. Of course, when they're younger, you know, all of them want to go to the NHL. And what we communicated from the beginning is, you will never, Clage and I always communicated this, we will never take away that dream. Because we would hear parents say, they would give a caveat in a conversation. Hey, I want my son to learn he's struggling with stick handling. I know he's not going to the NHL, and I know, wait, why did you just give that caveat? Because you don't know, and I don't know that he's not going to the NHL. Yeah, is it going to be hard? Of course, it's going to be very difficult. But why take that away from a 10-year-old? You know what I mean? Like, or an 11-year-old or 12-year-old, like, man, there's so much development to happen between, you know, where they're at now at that point and to where they're going to actually, you know, we're going to find out if they are going to actually make it to the NHL or not. As you know, there's a ton of development, right? So we never took that away. We communicated that. If your kid says, I want to go to the NHL, we're going to facilitate opportunities for him to go to the NHL the best we can. You know what I mean? So that means lesson opportunities, skill development, training opportunities in a group setting, summer camps, spring camps, 2-month spring training. That we basically said, if you want to play competitive travel hockey, you got to do the spring training camp in April and May. It's not mandatory, but if you want to get good, you have to do it, because in today's game, you got to develop your skill consistently. And you know as well as I that if you do it once a week, it ain't going to happen. You got kids doing it every day, right? And, you know, and I'm a firm believer in rest and taking a break. And that's what the summer's for, you know. But, you know, the way we structure it is go through your season. And in the spring, we're going to hit it hard in skill development for 2 months in April and May. Of course, they got pushed back a little bit with COVID last year. But But in a normal year, it was April and May. And then, in the summer, do what you want. We would have opportunities for lessons in the summer, but, it was kind of hit and miss, and everybody's got vacation schedules and other sports. And we encourage multi-sport. You got to have athleticism, but you can't just put the skates up until next October, from March to October. You can't do it anymore if you want to play at the highest levels. And, play baseball, play lacrosse. Lacrosse, great cross-training sport for hockey, right? Play football, play golf, whatever you want, play all of them, as long as you got the energy and the time, right? But we just really communicated, if you want to go to the highest levels of your game, you're going to have to work at it, and we're going to provide that opportunity. Now, there's a lot of kids in Tulsa that didn't. They just wanted to play house league, and we provided that too. And we communicated that, hey, there's a house league, we call it rec league, and there's a travel team, we call it competitive team, and we did that because that's what the baseball teams do there. And so it was kind of similar lingo. So if you're in an area where they don't call travel hockey, call it whatever all the other sports call it, so that the parents aren't confused. That's what we did, just to get over the language barrier of it. So that's kind of where we went with that. And so we, Clage and I, and we had some guys from Canada and a lot of ex-pros, because Tulsa's had a pro team for years. And actually, it's interesting. It goes back to the 20s. We did not know this. Tulsa had a pro team in the 20s, 1920s. Then it went away and come and go. And then, so hockey in Tulsa's been around for a while. It's just been in a small demographic, So, our goal is to just do our best to grow the game and provide for the kids that had a passion for it, whether it's at the house level or the travel level. And then, so as far as the coaching goes, we just had to utilize as many coaches with hockey knowledge as possible. And the dads that didn't have knowledge, we kind of helped coach them up through, our ADM sessions at the 8U level. And, we used to have, in the early days, we had coaches meetings, every couple months. And so, those are ways to stay in the world of the guys that are new to the game, and of course with USA Hockey, they got, in technology, there's all these resources just to kind of understand, the process of development for a youth hockey player.
Yeah, and that's massive. And I've seen some parent coaches that don't know anything or don't have a hockey background be some of the best. They just literally ask a bunch of questions, let the kids play, and they don't overwhelm them. Obviously, there's times where you need to push content, and obviously that's great. You have a huge ex-professional player pool to pull from on that, and obviously yourself, and it's just really powerful. So I love that. So,
well, one more thing with that I'd like to add, because I'm right on your page with it, but I think one of the things that is underestimated in youth hockey as a coach for coaches is the leadership. No matter what your background is, if you played stinking in the NHL or you never played hockey at all, it's the leadership that coach brings to the rink and to those kids. And, like you just said, we had dads that played other sports, but they just knew how to be on a team and knew how to lead a team. You know what I mean? And so, and again, we had a lot of pros there, but not a ton helped with the youth program. But we had guys that, that have played and not played, a healthy mix of it. And the guys that didn't play the game, really what was impressive to me as I've learned year after year, season after season, is that I can see the leadership that they've developed through their life in sports. And they're carrying it on to the kids by exampling it as a coach. You know what I mean? And one of the things I think is highly underestimated in any sport, not just youth hockey, is the intangibles that are taught in the game, the leadership skills, the character, the integrity, the learning to be a good teammate in a difficult, practice or even seat, time in the season, like a few weeks during a month during the season, those are huge life lessons. And to see how coaches respond to that in their leadership is awesome. It's fun.
And it's definitely fun for them. I mean, I know I've had conversations and people just love doing it, just being out there with their kids. It's a ton of fun. And I love exactly what you're talking about. through their life experiences, they have so much to give back through leadership, being a good teammate, working hard, understanding just like the little details and the intangibles.
Yeah.
I think you're spot on. Like they're much underrated by a lot of hockey people, but they provide so much. And I love being able to pull from their life experiences, whether it's hockey or not. It's just super powerful for those kids. And I would like to say that hockey or any sport is basically like the most important unimportant thing you'll ever do, because of everything it teaches and everything you learn through it. Like all of my best experiences and biggest growth have happened because I screwed up in hockey, which is a very low stakes environment compared to being a financial advisor and having to screw up with a client. Like
Right.
I don't want to make it in that area. I want to make it in the sport area and be able to learn and then transfer those.
Yeah. Yeah. And we could have a whole other podcast on that, honestly. I mean, it's so deep. But that's why the youth hockey coach or any youth coach is so important. And I would say to any youth program, like you got to be careful, not careful, but be mindful of who you're choosing as your coach, for the teams. Like, I mean, some people have wrong motives, not a lot, but we were blessed in Tulsa to have just people who just wanted to help. Hey, I haven't played the game, but I did play baseball and I just want to help. Perfect. You're the perfect candidate, because it's a willing heart and a good attitude, right? Just like the kids need to have a willing heart and a good attitude, and things will get better. Things will improve. Progress will happen. And really that's where we started. I mean, our first travel team, Greg, in Tulsa got beat consistently 20-25 to nothing the first season, right? And so Clayton and I are like, listen, don't get disheartened. This is a good learning lesson. We're going to get better. You guys are working hard. You're training. You're putting in the skill development. We had a Monday night session that was just for skills at the time, and so like they were doing it. And the next year they got better. In the fall, it just got better and better and better, and to the point where 5 years later we were winning the Dallas Stars Travel Hockey League playoffs at 10. You know what I mean? It's like, Tulsa, really? Yeah, really. You just got a willing heart and a good attitude. So
two things you can control.
That's right, man. It's just fun to even talk about. I mean, it's amazing the potential in humans and in little humans. These little guys just learning, and we're shaping lives, and we're shaping hockey players. And at the end of the day, I think when we're all old and not able to skate anymore because we're so old, we're gonna look back and say, you know what? That was really awesome time of life. I got to be a part of these kids' lives. I got to, pour into them and impart into them, my knowledge of life and the game. And that to me is what it's all about. Whether they make their accolades or not, that's to be seen. And I don't think anybody should take that away. Personally, is my personal opinion. I don't think it's fair. None of us know. I mean, we've heard of guys from especially today, all these non-traditional markets making it to the NHL, and yeah, it's hard, but man, chase that dream, go for it. It's a good life lesson, right? So that's where we started with our programs. We just kind of cast the vision, it's not for everybody. It's fine. You just want to show up and play twice a week. Man, we're here. We're going to have fun, but if you want to go for it, we're here. We're going to do it as well. So that's kind of how we grew the program.
So that leads perfectly into what I want to talk about next is, okay, so you're training these players. They're becoming very good. You're winning down in Dallas, which is not a short drive.
Nope. 4 hours one way. Yep.
So you're developing players to the point where they're probably saying to themselves, should I stay in Tulsa or should I go? And parents are probably asking themselves the same question, if, should they stay or should they go? I assume you've had a lot of those conversations and can guide us on, maybe selecting that program of where a good spot is, and then maybe when a player should stay versus when they should go for, something more. Like Tulsa's only got so many teams you can play in a reasonable hour. Maybe you need to go elsewhere.
Right, and that is a completely loaded question, as you know. I mean, I think for a person who's been in the game their whole life, that's a hard question to answer, and now we're talking about families and parents that have not been in the hockey culture. They have no background on the path for a high-end hockey player, right? And you know, the landscape's changing every day in hockey right now for the experienced, seasoned hockey dad or even coach, you know. So it's very specific to the player. I think what we saw in every market's a little different, right? Because there's different opportunities based on where you live and the hockey caliber within the region of the area that you live in, you know. And so I'll just give the example of my own experience in Oklahoma, right, in Tulsa. So there's two hockey markets. There's Oklahoma City and Tulsa, and then after that, it's, you know, go north, it's, you know, Kansas City, 4 hours north. You go east, it's St. Louis, 6 hours. You know, you go west, it's Colorado, Denver, that's 10 hours driving. Then you go south, it's Dallas, it's 4 hours. So kind of on a hockey island, right? From the perspective of, yeah, I'm just going to play across town and have a high-end game. You know, that ain't happening in Tulsa, you know, or in Oklahoma City. So those challenges are a little different. But if you live in a Dallas or a major metropolitan area, you usually have a AAA program or a couple, or like in Chicago's case, 10. No, just kidding, they have 5. But you know, that's a lot of opportunity there, right? Like, so it kind of depends on the market. So there's one part of the loaded question. But if you're like on a hockey island in a small market and you're going to have to travel consistently, there's probably going to be a point where there's going to need to be a relocation of that player, or with the family, or just a billet, send them off and bill it. Now, that goes back to personal opinion as well. I think it's way too early to billet a kid at 13 or younger. Some kids in Oklahoma left when they were 11. It's out of control, you know? That's way too young, right? Like, and we saw it. Like, kids, they didn't even make it past, you know, 18 in the game. It's sad, but then, you know, you had kids that left a little later and their family relocated and they're going for it, you know, and that's kind of what needs to happen. Now, when is that? That's a tough one. What if the kid's not ready but thinks he is? Like, is it smart? I want to ask you this, Mr. Greg. Is it smart for a kid who's played on the second line in a small market AA to go make a AAA team and play on the third line at the age of 14?
I would say no, because you want to have more exposure, more playing experience than
100%. 100%. I agree 100%. So, like, dominate where you're at first was kind of my rule, right? Like, well, if you're not dominating where you're at, then why go anywhere else? You know, because guess what? It ain't getting easier. It's going to get way harder, you know? So, and then you got parents say, well, he plays better at a higher level. Okay, maybe, but there's going to be a point where that little mirage goes away and it's too late. You already moved there. And now your kid's confidence is terrible playing on the third line of a AAA, you know what I mean? And had all these big expectations. So, and that's a tough conversation to have because it's not good news, you know, like, it's not like, oh, okay, you know, but I will say this, like, you know, we had kids in Tulsa that stayed. I had, you know, a kid 15 years old stay. He could, you know, probably a good age to leave if you're ready, but he wasn't, you know, and we all sat down with the player and the parents, and we said, listen, we don't think you're ready to go yet because of this. And you need to mature a little bit more. You need to dominate where you're at. Like, you haven't led your team in scoring. You haven't, you know what I mean, been in the key situation, every situation that's key in a game. If you're not out there every time at your local association, then you got to think, why is that, you know? And then fix it, right? Like, keep working at it and then develop in that area. And once you are, it might be time to move on to a higher level, you know? And so I think sometimes we, as parents, put the cart before the horse. And in that case, that, you know, players tend to do that, you know? And so the hardest part is being patient. We're in a society where we get stuff immediately, you know, instantly, like, but this doesn't happen instantly. And and here's the biggest thing out of all this is everybody's got a different path. Everybody's got a different path. And the cool thing about hockey is that there's so many paths, right? Like, there isn't, it's not like football where you play high school football and then you have two options. You go to D1 college, right? Or you go to a JUCO and play. That's it. There's two options there, right? But hockey, man, there's so many options. Like there's junior A, there's tier 1 junior at USHL, there's NA, there's NA3, there's AAA programs, there's, I mean, all over the place, right? There's academies, there's prep schools, there's all kinds of options for the player in today's game. And the hardest thing is finding the right fit for your player, right? And knowing when to leave. So, that's a tough one. That's not a one conversation answer, in my opinion. That's a lot of conversations, a lot of mulling over, a lot of honest. Gotta be honest with yourself, with where your child's at, and see the weaknesses in them. Everybody loves to see our strengths in our player, but we got to see the weaknesses too, and think, okay, how's that going to translate to where I'm thinking about going?
Yeah, I love that. Dominate where you're at first. If you're not dominating, it's very problematic to move. And I think you touched on it briefly, but I think it's super important. It's just understanding the psychology of the player and how their confidence alters when they get put in a new environment. Like, do they truly have confidence because their skills are good and they're ready for that? Or is it, I'm getting points against the worst teams in the league and
Right.
I feel great about it, but when it comes to hard competition, maybe I'm not producing. So
that
I
needs
feel
to be
like
a
I'm
stat.
ready, but I'm not ready.
That needs to be a stat. Like if you're one of those parents out there right now that is contemplating moving or having your child billet somewhere, pay attention to that. Is my player, it doesn't have to be points or scoring, but is my player doing better against the weaker teams only, or in the stronger teams when it's a tight game, does my player step up? Because if not, I would really think about the decision you're about to make. You know what I mean? Like it's not gonna all of a sudden get better just because you moved.
Yeah, big time. And I've had players and I've literally shown them like, okay, here's against the teams that you care about beating and want to win. And here's your points with teams that you don't care about. And it's like, okay, you've got 2 or 3 points in 6 games compared to 20 points in those other 6 games. So you feel like you're doing great, but we still need to actually go back and just get better. Like you can't hit the snooze button and say, oh, I'm so great. I'm so great. It's just recipe for disaster. And yeah, I've had those conversations and they're not always pleasant because the kids don't 100% understand, or maybe the parents don't.
Yeah, that's the hard part about being a coach. We talked about the rosy part earlier, where it's you're pouring into the kids and you're feeling accomplished and purposeful as a coach and as a human, and helping these kids love the game and go for their dreams. But then there's the part where they're going to need guidance, and some of that guidance isn't fun to hear all the time, but if we're being good stewards of our players, we have to have those conversations, and I've had plenty of those in Tulsa, and I just had to mentally prepare for them because I care about them, and I know they're not going to like what I'm about to say, but it's also the truth. But then also, like, listen, it's a process, like it's a journey, right? Like enjoy it. Everybody's got a different timeline, and do your best to accomplish what you can today, right? And today you need to work on playing against the better teams better, like not just scoring 6 goals against the weaker teams, or not just playing well against the weaker teams, or whatever the scenario might be for that individual player.
Blossom where planted is what I've always heard. Wherever your feet are, be there. A million ways to cut at that, but obviously we've touched on a lot of points that this isn't an easy decision, and we've kind of got at this a little bit, but what are maybe some common valid questions parents should be asking when they're getting into these conversations or they're contemplating these things?
About moving, or about
selecting a program or moving? It could be either or. Like, how do I select a good spot for my kid?
I think that honestly, when we're talking about that scenario, it's not about going to the program that has the best reputation all the time or all the accolades. You know what I mean? It's about finding the right fit for your player. and if there's a program that has great skill development coaching and coaches that really have a record of moving their players onto the next level, I would look at those. Don't even worry about their national championship record or how many tournaments they're winning, because sometimes those don't go hand in hand. A lot of times they do, but sometimes they don't. And I think that it's important to find a situation for your child where they're going to thrive, where you think they're going to thrive. Not just, oh, they're the best coaches, they do all the winning, they do all the moving on, I want to go there. Well, that might not be the best fit. You might need to go to a team that's, let's just call it rankings. I'm not huge on rankings, but it does give you like a somewhat of a blurry picture of the landscape of the skill level of teams. And so, like, say there's a 4th ranked team and then there's a 20 ranked team, right? Well, that 20 ranked program might be the best fit for your player, depending on the scenario. You know what I'm saying? And I'm giving really vague, like communication in this as to what it might be, but there's so many different variables, right? I mean, you got defensemen, you got forwards, you got goalies, you got all these different, one kid might not be puberty yet, one kid might be, you know what I'm saying? One kid might need more skill development, one kid might need more hockey IQ, you know what I'm saying? Like, well, there might be a coach that's just better at teaching this than the skill part, So, and I don't think the other thing is you don't want to go for a 1-year show either, right? Like, pick a program. If you're going to move your family or move your child, they need to be planted for a little bit. Like moving around year to year, I don't think is healthy for a kid. Now, when they get older, like when they're 18 or 19, that's pretty natural. Sometimes there's movement on teams depending on where you play on a junior team or whatnot. I'm speaking more of the 15, 16, 17 year age group with that one. That's my opinion on it. What about you?
I think that exactly what you're talking about is like find a good fit. And I'm the same way. Is like you want to be thinking ahead of maybe not this year, but what the ultimate goal is, and then working back to figure out what do I need to make that happen.
Right.
So I'm a start with the why and at the end and work way back.
Mm-hmm.
But same exact kind of concepts and things that you're talking about. I'm on the same page there. And yeah, I got two more quick questions for you.
Okay.
Try to keep this a reasonable time.
Yes, sir.
So
yeah.
let's dive into maybe some nerdy specific stuff. Okay, so you're coaching these players. What are the skills and habits that are most important to you that you try to impart on your players? Or like, hey, if there's a guy that Derek trained, he's got this and this.
Well, the top 2 things that I think most coaches actually communicate and would like their players to have is number 1, a good attitude, and number 2, a strong work ethic, right? Like, you got to be focused and with a good attitude when you show up, and man, just a hard worker. If without those 2 things, it goes back to what we're talking about, willing heart and a good, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're kind of the same thing. Like, without those 2 things, it's going to be hard to get the best out of that player, no matter what you're doing, whether it's, skill development or team play or whatever it is. It's just, it's required for that player to be their best and to achieve their dreams, whatever those dreams are. They got to learn to do that at a young age, in my opinion. They got to have a good attitude, have a focused, good attitude, and a strong work ethic. So, like, if I'm sitting back and daydreaming and just thinking, oh, what would I like people to say about players that I train? That would be the top 2 right there. I would want them to say, well, his players have a great attitude and they're focused and they outwork everybody, probably because I had to do that to just survive in hockey. It comes really easy for me to do that. And I struggle a little bit sometimes with kids that are talented that don't have both those pieces. I've learned to do better with it, but we all have to grow in certain areas, but those are the top 2. And then obviously you got to have good skill development in the player. They got to have good skills. Skating being the number 1. If you can't skate, you can't play at a high level, right? So I'm kind of getting sidetracked, I think. And were you asking me the top couple things that we wanted in players?
Yeah, so skating skill, good attitude, strong work ethic. I like all those. And I think what you're getting at is having a foundation to build off of. Like you're trying to figure out ways to maximize the players and they can maximize themselves first and foremost. So it's like
100%.
it's all about teaching. And if a kid is unable to learn, then they're not going to pick up the skills as fast as everyone, and therefore they're not going to be able to get ahead or get where they want to be. And I know that's something I believe you and I have talked about in the past is just setting kids up to become better learners. So therefore they can acquire all these things that are being offered to them, whether that be leadership or the hard skills, the intangibles,
Right.
X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just having that student of the game type of mindset, again, kind of goes back to your mindset, right? We're talking about things that are mindset based. And I think I'm going to jump off to a little rabbit trail here real quick. So bring me back real quick if you need to. Okay. But in today's age with media, social media and screens and everybody being on, I'm talking about the players on the screens constantly. I believe mindset training has become more and more prevalent for a player to make it at the top levels. Really have to not guard against it, but like be careful not to get swayed down the path of not having that excellent high-end mindset where you have that student of the game type mindset. If a kid, I can tell if a kid's been on a screen all day within 2 minutes of talking to him at practice. We're going to see data. I'm convinced of this. We're going to see data in probably a few years, maybe 10 years from now. That's going to be like smoking cigarettes back in the 50s when no one knew it was bad for you. You know what I mean? Everybody's smoking. It's going to be the same thing with screens. I'm guaranteeing it's going to happen. It's already coming out a little bit, but it's going to be like, this is not good for our mindset to be doing it this much. The hard part about it is that technology is just growing, right? And everything's on a screen now. So it's really an interesting dynamic for today's youth hockey player. But so to kind of get back to what you were saying, is getting elite at getting elite, right? Marty St. Louis said it on one of your podcasts that, and I listened to that like 10 times over again. I just kept going back to it. He's like, you just got to get elite at being elite. That's how you become really good, is that drive, that desire, which is the attitude kind of I'm talking about is one of the top two things, is like that inner drive, that fire to improve, right? And so when a player has that, pick a coach. They're going to get better, it's a lot of this is player based, which is why I think we had success in Tulsa, that we cast the vision, man. We just put them in a mindset where it's like, you can do this. You just got to want it, and you got to do these things and just keep working at it. And we would just, teach them the basics and then build from there, and to the point where we have, there's 8 players, Greg, playing AAA hockey this year out of Tulsa that are a little bit older now, and Clage and I are super proud of that. That's not like in an organization at that size. That's pretty good testament to those kids, of the drive that they have, and the effort that they put into this.
Yeah, and I'll back you up. So China just came out and they're restricting how much you can play video games as kids. They have the facial recognition, so you're only allowed an hour per day on school nights. So basically you can only work on weekends. So pretty crazy what they've got. And then the second piece, backing up here, is getting elite at improving and getting better. I remember talking to Red Gendron at one of these coaching conferences, and I was asking about Paul Kariya, and he's like, Paul Kariya was the best player you could ever ask for, but he's also a little bit of a pain in your butt because he was so demanding and asking questions, and he wanted to maximize the coach so much and get as much value you could out of each coach. And I think that's such a great mindset to have, is how can I maximize the situation at hand? How can I maximize this person in front of me to help? At the end of the day, it's what coaches want to do. So
100%. Yeah.
Obviously that's an epiphany that I would have had. You've talked about a few of these already, but my last question to you is, what are some epiphanies you've had while working in hockey? Because you've had a wealth of experiences that I think are pretty unique, yet can be translated to, so many parents, players, coaches, etc.
Man, there's a lot of them. But I think one of the things that after a few years in coaching full time, that I realize is that how important the parent role is to the success of the player. So, we have parents that say, I don't know the game, but I want to do everything I can to help my kids succeed. And that is where we can either as parents get in the way or facilitate that. And that's kind of a juggling act. I mean, because every kid's a little different, but the parent knows their child the best. So there's a fine line of pushing them too hard, but then there's a fine line of not pushing them hard enough. Like if they're wanting to go to the NHL and they're not going hard on the ice every practice, well, why are you wasting your money? You know what I mean? Like, dude, go hard or like play house league, like there has to be that demand from the parent, and I'll see kids that, there's not a lot, but there's some that just, they only work 75% of the time. Well, the other 25% of the time, there's going to come a day in the next couple of years where they're going to get cut because of that. They're good players right now, right? Like, but hold on, like that's where the parents need to kind of pull them to the fire a little bit more. So I think that, and that's the hardest thing to do as a parent is to, help your child, but also gently discipline them or hold them to a standard that they're not going to like, but it's required, right? So there's one that is really hard to communicate because it's not a fun thing to talk about, and it's a difficult thing to talk about because it can be translated many different ways depending on what that parent is hearing after you communicate it, So, I could say that to one parent and the kid's not eating sugar. He's got no screen. And it's like, wait a minute. We didn't say that. But we did say you got to work hard when you come to the rink. You know what I mean? Like every shift, every time, you know what I mean? So, so there's a line there, but then also as a coach, we talked about this, I think offline one time. Excuse me, 1 second. As a coach, I'm saying, move the puck from the bench. And he held on to it. It was the right play. Well, don't listen to me because you just made the right play. That was awesome. You know what I mean? So like over coaching sometimes is something that I've had to learn not to do, especially when in your market where you kind of know more than anybody by default. You know what I mean? Like, I was living in Oklahoma, right? Like there's not a whole lot of guys that, right, could say that, but it's also like, wait a minute, that doesn't give me the right to like bark a command to let the kids play and learn and then talk about it, and there's going to be mistakes. Like we talked about passing in front of the net. I think we did. Was it you and I can't remember. This is a big one among coaches. Well, don't pass it in front, never pass it. Well, wait a minute. You can sometimes it's the right play actually in your own end. You know what I mean? So it's situational, and that is why it's so hard to communicate. Hockey IQ, the name of your broadcast. Man, talk about the depths of the ocean on that one. Like we'll never achieve the depths of the ocean of hockey IQ. It is so situational and so different for every player, how they see it. And it's very difficult to communicate because it's instantaneous. And every situation changes instantaneously based on the opponent and your teammates, right? So like, again, over coaching. No, let's just teach the principles and let them decide, So that's one epiphany I had too.
Awesome. Well, this has been a blast, and I think we've stuck a lot of good nuggets into a very short time frame. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing your expertise and experience. I think all the stories you have, maybe you generalize them. It's kind of like HIPAA, like you can't talk about the individual patient, but you can kind of talk about the scenario. Right. I think that's really cool to be able to do that. So again, thanks for sharing all that with us.
Man, thanks for having me on. It's an honor. It's fun. And you got a great You got a great broadcast, and I really enjoy your newsletters. And I mean, I use that as a resource too. And when I'm doing video with kids, I'll pull up, you know, one of your newsletters and show like one of your points or whatever, and we'll talk about it. So thank you for doing that.
Awesome. Glad you enjoy it. You take care.
Thanks. See you, Greg.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I know I did. So before we let you go, though, we'd like to remind you to please like our podcast, subscribe to it, give us a follow, and share this with all the hockey people in your life. We really appreciate growing this community, this podcast. Remember, we also have a newsletter, the Hockey IQ newsletter as well. Really excited to continue to grow this. So please help us grow this further by liking, subscribing, following, and sharing with everyone. So appreciate you all. Take care.